Even better. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the committee to order. Diana, would you please call roll?
Okay, Representative Berger,
Here.
Representative Nemec,
Here.
Representative Obermueller,
Here.
Representative O'Hearn,
Here.
Representative Pendergraph,
Here.
Representative Smith,
Here.
Representative Stivar,
Present.
Representative Wiley,
Here.
Chairman Brown.
Here. All right, committee, we do have three bills, two of which I expect to have a decent amount of discussion on today. The third one, I don't think will take as much time, but we certainly have our work cut out for us. So I'd like to keep us on topic if at all possible. If I strike you down on your questions or whatnot, just know that it's not personal. We're just trying to move through the bills, okay? So first bill that we have up on deck is Senate File 16. Director, I know that this was worked with you in the interim, so I'll go ahead and bring you forward, but I also believe we have the Director of A&I with us as well. I don't know if they're planning on coming forward or if they're going to wait for public comment. Director Reiner, I'll just go ahead and hand it over to you. I'll have you give us the background and a run through of the bill quickly, and then we'll welcome Director Bach as well.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Luke Reiner, Director of WYDOT, and with me certainly from WYDOT is Mr. Rossetti. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, so what's in front of you here is a moving expense reimbursement bill. So a little bit of history here and a discussion on why this is important to us as an agency and to the employees of the state. We did used to have the authority to basically pay and reimburse moving expenses at the director's level. We lost that about 6 years ago based on the interpretation of the statute. Okay, so that's where we sit relative to that. As we've watched the impact of that on our force, I would just tell you that it has been negative. Because what we have seen occur is that the employees who you'd like to move don't. And what we've seen is a mismatch in terms of the right employee at the right place to do the job at the right time. I do see this bill as one of those as a response to, hey, what else are you doing for employees? This is one of them, is reimbursing moving expense. So it does a couple things. One, for the employee, it helps you grow in your skills because the next level of responsibility for our statewide agencies may not be in the community where you live. It may be on our engineer side that you start off as we call them a project engineer, and maybe you start in Lander. And now it's time to be a residential engineer. And so that job's not open in Lander, but it is open in Gillette. And we need to get you there for you to grow and for this agency to ensure that we have the right skill set in the right place to do the job. And when we don't, then sometimes I think we get a mismatch. So certainly my task, I think, as the WYDOT director is to get the right person in the right job at the right time for all of us, because it impacts us across the state. I would say, and I thank Miss Erin Williams, who's the director of HRD, and certainly Ms. Bach at A&I, because they have, as we have really had some cases where we really needed to work this, they have authorized us on a case-by-cases to do it. And so it has been allowed. What this seeks is really the general provision to allow it all the time. What the bill does is it certainly keeps language. I'll get to the bill here in a sec. I'll tell you the other thing that I would say just from a director standpoint is, as we talk about recruiting and retaining, I do see this as a retention effort. Because this says to our employees, hey, listen, we are interested in your career development and we are interested in retaining you. And so that factors in. We have been asked about cost as we've worked this through the interim, as we've worked it through the other house. or the other chamber. And really the cost impact we were saying is zero. Because if you have a vacancy, you probably are not paying anybody. And so from our standpoint, as the director, I'd expect to take this from vacancy savings. And so I see really the fiscal impact as zero. There is one amendment, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring forward. And so I think I'm happy to walk through the bill and maybe to kick it over to Mr. Rossetti and Ms. Bach, depending on your pleasure there.
Let's go ahead and just ask real quick, any questions, committee, for the director? Yes, Vice Chair O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You said this was a program 6 years ago, that it was taken out. What was the funds utilized? I like your idea of a vacancy. Doesn't create any, the money's there, or the money is not there because you don't have a person in that position that you want in that position. But 6 years ago, it went away, and that might be a Ms. Bach question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Director.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hurd, really my understanding, and I wasn't in the business 6 years ago, there's never been a dedicated funding source. It came out of funds available to the agency.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we can kick it over to Mr. Rossetti if you're comfortable with that, Director. Mr. Rossetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Taylor Rossetti, Support Services at YDOT. A little bit of background. 6 years ago, Director Bach was in a different position. We worked very closely with her at that time on this issue, and Luke hadn't come over yet. And really what happened was that language there on the bottom of page 1 on lines 13 and 14, we were pointedly asked a question by our commission what that meant. And that language reads, when the transfer is made at the request of and the benefit of the state of Wyoming. At the time, a lot of different folks were in different positions. And when we asked for clarification on that question, essentially what we were told is basically if Luke wanted to move you to a location, that's when this applied. So that kind of shut down the program we had. Representative O'Hearn at the time, that was just a program that we funded internally the same way that the director described. So since that time, we have worked with ANI, and on a case-by-case basis, we do get approval to do this. It has worked in some locations, and others it still has not worked. So again, what we're looking for is tools in our toolbox. I think the purpose behind the bill and really what's in the bill there on page 2, it's just really in the meat of the bill, right? That's all it is. What it does is it differentiates 2 paths. If we do have to downsize or force move people, it states that we shall pay for these expenses. And then lines 10 through 18 just basically makes it clear that if we're going to do this, we may pay an amount for these expenses. And that would be paid at under the direction of Director Bach's department. They would set up the guidelines and then we would be able to pay that. Really what we're trying to do is kind of try to future-proof this so that when I'm no longer sitting here and you guys don't get the pleasure of seeing me every single day, everyone knows and it's clear that this is a program that's available. I think the amendment that the director mentioned there is really there on lines 17 and 18 on page 2. And this was added on the other side, and it basically says this paragraph shall apply only to employees of the Department of Transportation. I think that this is an important tool for agencies throughout the enterprise to have at their disposal. We have talked to some other directors. Many of them have expressed support for that concept. May never have to use it, but it'd be a nice tool to have in the tool chest. So with that, I'd certainly stand for any questions, Mr. Chair.
Committee, any questions for Mr. Rossetti? Seeing none. Mr. Rossetti, I just have one. I look at the idea of this as a recruitment and retention effort, but the language on lines 14 on page 1 and into 15 page, or I'm sorry, to line 1 of page 2 is recruited for permanent duty within. I have a little bit of reservation about that. I see this as trying to make sure that we're keeping, retaining, and working with our own current employees, recruiting upwards and keeping those state employees. But I see that as the potential benefit of paying moving expenses for somebody that was just hired from the East Coast and says, well, I'm only going to take this job if you guys pay for my moving expenses, and it costs us $25,000, $30,000 to move an entire family up and over here. So am I misreading those 2 lines and what their intentions are?
Mr. Chairman, I do believe you can read that line that way, that it would be open to both recruiting from external as well as internal. I think that really the key to that then is working with our partners over at A&I really to set the parameters under which those programs would apply. That's the intent of this really, as we looked at it, was more the internal moves, but there's absolutely times where you've got to bring some talent in from outside, and occasionally this might sweeten the pot and allow that to occur.
Any further questions? Representative Wiley.
Mr. Rossetti, just to clarify these expenditures, they will come out of the YDOT budget, correct? Not the general fund.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Wiley, really, when you look at this, it's generally going to be part of the 100 series for any agency. So it's really going to be money that's sitting in a budget existing. And the concept on it is that you'd be using money that you'd otherwise be paying for salary for the individual while it's vacant. You'd go through that recruiting process, identify that candidate, and then some of that money that hadn't been expended for those salaries would be utilized here. So the concept is that money is already in existing agency budgets. The directors already have that. And there'd be limited cases where I could see they'd need to go to seek some additional outside funds.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I understand this correctly, what we're trying to do is increase the discretion of the agency as to what moves may or may not be paid for. And yet I'm hearing that there's no fiscal impact. Could you elaborate on that?
Mr. Rossetti.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergraft, really, when you look at the positions that are here, we just had a district engineer position out on the western part of the state. When those positions become vacant, a couple of folks on the committee may know it starts becoming disruptive to operations out there. We have internal candidates that are very good fits for those, but oftentimes it's very complicated to get them over there. While those positions are vacant, that salary expenditure is actually just sitting there and not being expended. So then when we go through the process of filling that position, we could use some of that pay that hadn't been expended and pay to move a successful person over, and then that salary goes again. So again, that money is already sitting in a budget. It's not encumbered otherwise. It would just be utilized in a different manner in order to fill that position.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up then. I've run into situations like this before where monies were budgeted at 100 level, could be subbed out to a 900 level. You apparently have the authority to move money as you see fit.
Mr. Rossetti.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergraft, I do believe this would still be viewed as a 100 series expenditure. It's still considered basically a pay expenditure. So it doesn't require that transfer between a 100 and a 900 series budget.
Okay. Ms. Bach, let's go ahead and send it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. Just to kind of go off on Representative Pendergraft's question, most agencies can't move that money anyway. There are a few that can, but this would be directly out of the 100 series vacancy savings, and that's how we've utilized it in the past as well. The one, obviously we are neutral on the bill. This is a tool that we have used, and 6 years ago, I guess it was 6 years ago that I was in the HRD administrator position. So what we've done is utilize the moving expenses as an exception to the comp policy. And we had done that consistently. So what would happen, and I want to talk a little bit about the amendment, that this paragraph shall apply to only employees of the Department of Transportation. That treats our employees differently. We wouldn't be able to pay at that point, we wouldn't be able to make the exception anymore. So with that language in there, it creates a problem for the rest of the enterprise. And to kind of go back on Representative Pendergraft, when we're appropriated our 100 series at the beginning of the biennium, there's a few things that we can use vacancy savings for. It's very limited. One of them being where you can, if somebody leaves that has been here for a while and they have leave balances, that they're allowed to take with them. We use vacancy savings to pay that out. Then we keep that vacant for a little while to make that up, especially the smaller agencies that are in a tight crunch. So this is a normal use of that vacancy savings. And we would talk about how much we would allow for agency to utilize that. I think in the past, which I think was low, we had a number and I think it was $5,000. That probably is a little low now, but I think $20,000 is high. So I think we would work that through policy and that would be transparent to see exactly what the policy of A&I is.
Any questions for Director Bach? Seeing none, Director, my only question on this is you mentioned the smaller agencies and having that 100 series, we'll call it fungibility, if you will. If an agency, I'm thinking boards and commissions in particular, or maybe thinking like CPAs or something like that, where they have one or two people and they don't really have a lot of extra 100 series, but they find somebody from out of state or from Sheridan to move down to Cheyenne, but they don't have that. What is the mechanism for that board, that commission, and or that agency to request some additional funds to be able to pay for this? Because that 100 series is going to be so finite. Just out of curiosity, what that would look like.
Chairman Brown, I think that's a great question. I do believe that they would not have to use vacancy savings if they had money in their 900 series and they wanted to utilize movement on a contract, they could do that. Otherwise, I think they would work with the budget department to try to figure out a way to allow them to have this benefit as well.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Seeing no further questions, we'll release you guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate the information. I do notice that we have at least one other agency. Any other agencies interested in talking? Please come on up and fill up the chairs. Deputy Director.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good to see you. John Kennedy, Deputy Director for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Obviously, this issue that you're addressing with this bill, which we very much appreciate, is benefits are not unique to WYDOT. Obviously, we have the same situation and support it for the very same reasons. However, saying that, this proposed amendment has come up. I don't think you've discussed it yet, but that exclusion that's in line 17 and 18 pretty much takes that benefit away from game and fish. We wouldn't intend to use general fund monies for this. Our commission has the budget to fund this, not necessarily from our 100 series. We actually would budget a separate account for moving expenses, but certainly we have a variety of places we could go to get that funding, and this would really help our recruitment for sure. So thank you very much.
Any questions for the Deputy Director? Thank you, John. Appreciate you being here. Ms. Babbitt.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Heather Babbitt. I'm the Deputy Director of the Department of Corrections. And like the Deputy Director that was here before me talked about, this would benefit the Department of Corrections as well. We feel it would be another tool in our toolbox to help recruit folks. We are one of the largest state agencies. We have just over 1,000 employees, and the vast majority of our employees work in one of our 5 correctional facilities or in one of our probation and parole offices, which are located throughout the state in every county. And we do struggle with recruitment, especially when we look at our internal applicants, folks who want to promote. We want to promote people throughout the department and between our facilities and field offices, and oftentimes relocating are issues that go into play with that. So we do feel like this would be a tool that might help us address some of those issues.
Thank you, Ms. Babbitt. Any questions? Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm new to this, so forgive me if I ask a silly question. Do you currently, within the Department of Corrections, pay to move existing people from place to place? Are you strictly looking at this as a recruitment tool for new folks?
Deputy Director.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergraft, we do not currently pay moving expenses and we would look at paying moving expenses, on a case by case basis, looking at the position and the candidates and it would be case by case as we look to recruit. But we feel it would be one aspect of many that we would look at to improve recruiting efforts.
Anybody else? Deputy Director, just because I never let anybody get away without any questions, except I didn't have one for the other Deputy Director. I am curious on the finite amount of campuses that you guys have. Do you have a lot of transfers from one campus to another that this would benefit? So let's say if they were at the State Pen in Rollins and somebody wanted to promote, let's say, to the women's prison in Torrington, that this would be a benefit used to entice somebody from Rollins to Torrington. Is that what you guys see the utilization of this being?
Mr. Chairman, we could potentially use this, just like you're saying, for internal promotions between facilities or field offices, as well as when we look at external candidates for some of our executive positions, if that was a factor in it. But we do have a lot of internal movement. And so we would potentially look at using this.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One more. Oh, yes, Representative Berger.
Thank you. And I, just to add on to Mr. Chairman, just to kind of add on to yours. When you look at those transfers, it just keeps those workers continuing to work in corrections, correct?
Ms. Babbitt.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Berger, yes, exactly.
Seeing nothing further. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other agencies wishing to testify? Seeing none, any public testimony on this? Mr. Winnie? If you can, I'll ask you to be succinct as possible. We have quite a bit of bills to try to get through today, so I'm going to ask you to keep her brief and keep her on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
I just make the comment about the state employee moving expenses. That the military spends a lot of money moving people around because the military stagnates in a hurry and you lose wars that way. I don't know how many levels of state government would be appropriate to be moving around, but that's a way to keep people from stagnating. And so I believe this would be a good thing to pass, subject to your questions succinctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winnie. Appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Winnie? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Winnie. Any further public testimony? Seeing none, we'll close public testimony and bring the bill back to the dais. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Nemec, seconded by O'Hearn. Committee, we're not going to run through the bill completely. There is a proposed amendment before you. If anybody wishes to do that, is there any other motion, discussion, or amendments?
Make an amendment. We delete 17 and 18. Excuse me.
So there's been a motion to move and second the proposed amendment. Motioned by O'Hearn, seconded by Berger. Any discussion? Representative Pendergraft?
I look at this thing as an expansion of a program, and yet we're being asked to believe that there's no fiscal damage. And I'm a no on the amendment, and I'm a no on the bill.
Any further discussion? My only response, Representative Pendergraft, is after being here for the past 7 years and cutting government the way that we have and eliminating the open positions that we've cut. I certainly don't believe that there's any agency out there that will be using this negatively to try to use this wrong. They are going to be doing as best they can to keep this within there. They did have this program up to 6 years ago. I remember very specifically when this program was cut. And it's actually hurt. It's hurt our state agencies being able to attract and retain quality employees. And it's actually hurt upward movement in a lot of agencies as well. So no further questions on the amendment. All those in favor of the proposed amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
All right, that amendment passes. Any further amendments? Question on the bill. Diana, would you please call roll on Senate File 16 as amended?
Okay, Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative Obermuller,
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft,
No.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
No.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 2 noes, do pass with amendment.
Thank you, Diana. Any volunteers for this one, committee? Representative Berger, you're looking refreshed from your last one. How about you carry this and I'll back you up?
As well.
Okay.
All right. All right, we're gonna move on. Thank you, committee, for indulging us and trying to get through these as quickly as possible. The next bill that we have up for us is Senate File 21. This is high occupancy vehicle lanes. I believe we've got YDOT here with this one as well, and I know that we've got plenty of testimony on this one as well. So, Director, if you would, please. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Luke Reiner, Director of YDOT. Mr. Chairman, what you have here in Senate File 21 is a permission for HOV lanes. So a little background here is certainly this bill applies statewide. The origin of this bill really came from a county in the west that we're looking at expanding or looking at having to address a congestion issue out there. You say, hey, there's no congestion in the state of Wyoming. I will tell you, if you've ever driven Highway 22, which is the road that heads out west from Jackson over the mountain, over Teton Pass, that road is congestion. It is the highest average daily traffic of any 2-lane road that we have in the state of Wyoming. And if you drive it during a large parts of the year, it is bumper to bumper and it's slow. We have accelerated the process of what we call the NEPA process, which is a process of planning what we're going to do on that corridor because of the problem. I moved it up 2 years. And so we've started that process now. We don't know what the final solution on that road will be. And I'll tell you that right now. We will let the process work. But as we sat down with the elected officials in that county, the discussion was we'd like to have HOV lanes on this roadway, to which you say, okay, that is an option that we could look at. And then I said, you know what, right now, it's not authorized in statute for us to enforce an HOV lane. I could designate, we could designate in YDOT any lane today as an HOV lane, but we don't have the ability to enforce it. And so the short story is with this bill is that it provides the mechanism for us to enforce an HOV lane that's placed in the state and give the appropriate, law enforcement authority, whether it's municipal, county, or state, the ability to enforce the law. So that's the nexus of the bill. We're happy to briefly walk you through and pick out some high points on the bill if you'd like.
Director, I would appreciate that, just considering that this is the first time that the majority of this committee has heard this bill. I'll have you just briefly go through it. We don't have to go, line by line, but
Absolutely.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, certainly on page 1 is the whole act defining what we do in there. I'll flip you over to page. And actually on the bottom of page 1 is a new paragraph where section 31(5-238), which designates the high occupancy vehicle lanes and establishes for the penalty. If you flip over then to page 2, line 1 through 7, there it says the director and local authority may designate any part of a roadway as a high occupancy lane. Now, lines 4 through 6 are actually important and was actually some refinement that was made to the bill through the interim process and actually into this session, where it says, hey, listen, if there's only 2 lanes, one going in one direction and one in the other, that may not be designated as an HOV lane. Okay, so that's a really important consideration because then it would inhibit the free movement on that road. So a 2-lane road, lane like we normally drive on, one of those lanes may not be designated as HOV lane. So that's line 4 through 6. And I pointed out because I think is important. And then you go through really line 9, starting at 9 line is where you start talking about that who can be in those lanes. And you can see that there's some exceptions in line 12 through 15 about, hey, those vehicles can be in a high occupancy vehicle lane and not be penalized. And then you get into line 17 and 19. And what you see there is, hey, listen, if you happen to be in HOV lane because you're making a turning movement, no penalty, right? And you just sort of think about the mechanics of that. If you have two lanes going in one direction and one of them's an HOV lane, at some point, you know, depending on if it's left lane or right lane, you're going to probably be trying to turn off that highway. And it's very likely you're going to have to go into an HOV lane to turn off that road. So that allows that movement in terms of the road. And then you slip down to line 21 where it says, all right, department, here's where you start making the rules for how we're going to operate that in terms of design, operation, maintenance, and required signage. And then you go into page 3 on line 2, and you start talking about here's the penalty section really from line 2 through line 17. And those actually the penalties were adjusted during the interim. Originally, it referred to our standard penalty table, fine table. And the feeling of the committee was that was too high. And so you can see that the fines are actually fairly low compared to the other fines that are paid. And so that was a change that was made during the interim, really say, yes, we recognize there's a penalty, but here's what it is. Okay.
Director. Representative, or I'm sorry, Vice Chair O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are those comparable to HOV lanes in other states? I think those are kind of low. Return on investment, a police officer trooper out of commission for an hour or so, writing $125 ticket.
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hearn, your understanding, my understanding would, I think in some states the fines would be higher. Certainly it's a choice of this body on what that is. And for us, what was essential, if we designate an HOV lane, we must have a mechanism to enforce it. Otherwise, I don't know how we would ever manage it and why would allow an HOV lane. If we,
Director, hold on just a second. I got another question here. Representative Nemec.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Director, just a question. I've driven on a few HOV lanes around the country, and why was bicycles included in here?
yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Nemec, you know, I thought somebody might ask me that, and I probably should have just paused there and talked to that. A lot of discussion on the other chamber about that. I believe that's in there because on some roads, the bicycle, there may not be enough room on the shoulder, and you may actually have a bicycle that's even though we really don't want you there, that would be over in the lane. And so the determination was, okay, you aren't in violation of the HOV rule. You may be in violation of some other rules, right? But not a violation of HOV lane. The bicycle thing was there as it was originally written. Well, we are not hung up on having bikes in that lane. So if you look at the area of the state that we're looking at the potentially using this initially, there's a beautiful bike lane off to the side. And I would not anticipate any bicycles being on the lane on Highway 22.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too am a experienced driver around HOV lanes. I drove virtually every day for many years from Colorado Springs all the way through Denver. And I saw what I determined was a vastly underused portion of the highway. So my question to you is, what is the advantage if we have to have multiple lanes anyway, as you described? What is the advantage of declaring one of those high occupancy vehicle to just having an additional lane?
Director.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergraft, as we looked at it, typically the solution around the nation has been, if you have an HOV lane, it's the opportunity to move lots of people quicker. And that's the intent here in discussion is one of the options may be you've got buses and you've got vehicles with more than one person, with multiple people in it. And the intent is that group of people can get where they're going faster and to alleviate the strain on the road network. And so now will that end up being the solution in this case? We don't know yet, but certainly it's an option that I think we should consider professionally as has been done across, the entire nation. And this gives us the tool to consider that. But that's whole intent again, is moving that group of people, mass transit. I think what really frustrates communities in this scenario is to have a bus or a van that's full of people sitting, waiting on vehicles with just one occupant. And so this gives you the option not to have that.
Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I travel quite a bit all over the country for my regular job. I've never ran into a toll or a high occupancy road that wasn't a toll road. This is what we're looking at, is to toll this?
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, negative. So at this, now that is an option if you chose to do that, but that is not the intent of this. And I would say I have driven on HOV lanes that are not tolled in other parts of this. Specifically, I think it was out in Maryland. So.
Okay, let's go ahead and go back to the bill, Director.
Right, thank
If you will.
you.
I think you
So
dropped
if we-
us off on to it somewhere at the penalties there, and we were heading into
Yeah,
section 2.
so at the bottom of page 3, you get into section 2, which is really again a new paragraph, and it's definitions. And you can scan down there through what a high occupancy vehicle is on page 4, what the high occupancy vehicle lane means, and what a public transportation vehicle means. They're starting on page 16. Those definitions are important because they were certainly used on page 2 in terms of authorizing who can be on in the HOV lane. And so really the definitions then take you through line 16 on page 5. Starting then on line 16 on page 5, you get into the other exceptions portion of this. So on line 16, paragraph 31.5-106 is where you say, hey, emergency vehicles are authorized to be on our HOV lane if required. And so that takes you then over to page 6 and starting on line 6. And there's where you'll see basically 2 matching exceptions. One that starts on page, on page 6, line 6, and then again on page 6, line 20. And that's where really conforming amendments to say, hey, listen, if you're supposed to be driving on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, depending on the HOV, status, because typically we say, hey, if it's a 2-lane road and you're driving slower than other people, be on the right. Well, if it's an HOV lane, that rule may not apply. And so that's what those 2 sections actually do, is adjust the language to allow to our rules for the HOV lane. Mr. Chairman, that's a very quick run through of the bill. No suggested amendments for us at this point, but we think it's written as well as it can be at this point.
Thank you very much, Director. Appreciate you walking through the bill with us. Representative Berger.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I'm pretty familiar with this area you're talking about. And can I use names of towns now?
Yes.
So I'm thinking of coming in from Hoback Junction on into Jackson. We're redoing all that. So obviously it's 2 per side. It's 2 lanes per side, correct? It's going to be that way all the way to Jackson. Is that correct?
Director Chairman, Representative Berger, correct.
Okay. And so we would say that on either side, on the right and the left side, that you would designate high occupancy lane, right? So one lane would be high occupancy and the other would just be for. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, that certainly is an option.
An
I have
option.
not heard that discussion for the road that goes north of Hoback Junction into Jackson.
Okay,
Okay, the discussion that this has come about with is Highway 22 heading west out of Jackson. So it goes through Wilson and
okay.
then it goes over
Up over the-
Teton Pass.
Got it.
All right. Now, why is that road so congested, you might be asked?
Oh, yeah.
And it's because there's there's limited affordable housing in the town of Jackson. And so the employees of various establishments in Jackson live in Idaho and drive over that pass twice a day. Or they may be coming from the south.
Yep. So then my
Follow up.
question, follow up. Then the potential from Holback, we could, it could end up coming into Jackson there too, was correct?
Mr.
Director.
Chairman, Representative Berger, certainly, if this were to pass and it was so desired by the community and by YDOT,
Okay,
then that would be a viable option for that road.
okay. And I guess my final question then, will this apply, could this apply on I-80 on the interstates?
Director.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Representative Berger, at this point, I would not see us doing that on the interstate. I think
Yes, sir. Representative Berger, you're okay. That's
I'm
what we
just-
do. We work bills.
Yep, I'm just working, I'm thinking, because I have some concerns with these lanes. Just because there is a lot of traffic coming from Holback to Jackson, and there's some concerning areas right now, especially some neighborhoods. Are you familiar with like Rafter J? Know what I'm saying?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Berger, I've driven that road multiple times.
Yeah.
So, but where specifically Rafter J is, I don't know.
And there's a couple neighborhoods just coming into Jackson right on the left end, the west side of coming into Jackson. And just coming out of those areas, those neighborhoods are getting more and more difficult. And there's no traffic lights right there. And I see some nodding, but there's no traffic lights. When you put in these high occupancy lanes, does that hinder the ability for maybe some of those people in those neighborhoods to start asking for a traffic light to be in that area?
Director.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Representative Berger, I think, when we start talking about real specific traffic control devices, what I typically say is I have on my staff a bunch of wonderful engineers that have studied that as a profession. And it's dangerous for me to start entertaining those type of questions. We're certainly happy to invite Mr. Dehoff up if we'd like to do that, or Mr. Gillette. But what I would say is that everything has to work in concert with each other. And it is not lightly that in a congested area that in an area with, I think, lots of turning movements, that I would probably not see an HOV lane. And the one where we're really talking about, again, is not the road you're talking about, but is really a major commuter route per se. And so there's that. If that answers, we could leave it otherwise. Okay.
I think we're good, and I appreciate where you're coming from, Representative, because it's not just the here and now that we're discussing, it's that potential impact of what things could be in the future. So I appreciate that. Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Forgive me, Director, I'm having a real hard time picturing how two lanes going in the same direction would be more efficient if they were effectively limited by the traffic that's within them. How would be advantageous to simply having two lanes where the buses would probably keep right, other cars would move more quickly. Commuters going a longer distance would probably move over to the left lane and move on out of there while others turning off. So if you could maybe help me out as to why this might be more efficient than just two lanes.
Sure.
Director.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergraft, let me just basically, I think, go back to the statement that says it depends on how much traffic is on that road. It could well be that if you expand that road from 2 lanes to 4 or 2 lanes to 5, you don't need an HOV. Right now, the road that Representative Berger's talking about, the ones north and south from Jackson, my sense is we don't need an HOV lane. And it could be that we fix the problem without an HOV lane, right? Where what this bill does, it allows the professionals on my staff working through the process is to do the science and the math behind your question. Because I suspect that there is a breaking point in terms of what we call average daily traffic, where it would actually be more efficient to move multi-occupant vehicles in a segregated lane. But I think for us to sit here and today to say, yes, we're going to do it, or no, we won't, we can't. We have to do the study. What this bill does is gives us the ability to actually use that as a potential option. Otherwise, it's off the table because we can't enforce it. And then we will not be designated an HOV lane if it can't be enforced.
Director, thank you. And something else, Representative, that we did here during the interim, and it's kind of a different way of looking at this, is living within the means that we have right now, as opposed to adding on and expanding the roadways and having to expand what we currently have. So there's 3 lanes currently right now, one running in each direction in a turn lane. So they can expand into that turn lane and utilize that turn lane for high occupancy in one direction during the morning, and then flip it around and bring it back the other way during the afternoon. Those types of things, as opposed to adding on an additional lane, which if I remember right, is just over $1 million a mile for concrete right now. So it's a significant cost savings to the state and to the communities as well.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's an excellent memory you have there on that.
I don't know how I remember these things sometimes, but any further questions for the director? Seeing none. Thank you, Director. We'll keep you in the bullpen here, and we'll see. Is there any further agencies out there? I don't see anybody, but I do have a county commissioner, and I'm guessing he's chomping at the bit. Commissioner, please join us if you will.
Chairman Brown, members of the committee, Lee Livingston, Park County Commissioner here representing WCCA. I was hoping for folks to go in front of me and expound on all the salient points in the essence of, I know you guys are rushed for time. We stand in favor of this, especially since it's an option and it's a tool in the toolbox, and it's not requiring us to implement or make HOV lanes. I would just wonder if I could talk the director into designating a trailer load of horses as being a high occupancy vehicle. Other than that, I would stand for questions.
Any questions for WCCA? All right. Thank you,
you.
sir. All right. We'll open this up for public comment. I've got, I think, at least 2, if not 3. Come on up, please. Fill the chairs. Former representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
Sure,
apparently
please.
that's a committee. Apparently that will be how I am addressed for the rest of my life.
Well, you were former commissioner too, so do you?
Right. And so my name is Andy Schwartz. I'm actually representing the town of Jackson. But for those of you on the committee who don't know me, I was a county commissioner in Teton County for 12 years. So I am intimately aware of all of the background and how we have gotten to this point. I don't want to take too much time, but I want to address the issue of buses and also the issue of HOBAC. So I'll start with buses. We have a robust transit system. I believe it's the largest in the state. And part of the reason it's necessary, on top of our population within the county, which is approaching 30,000, about a third of our workforce commutes over Teton Pass from Idaho. And then in the summer, we get approximately 50,000 tourists in a day. So we have a traffic problem everywhere. It's not just on Highway 22, but there is a ripple effect from 22 that affects all of the community. And we've been watching this for years, and we recognize that part of the solution to the overall traffic situation is improving the transit system. And the mantra on transit, it needs to be frequent and it needs to be convenient. And when buses can't move freely, it's not convenient. The route to Hoback Junction is largely that there are residential communities on that road, but there's no major town or commercial development. Whereas with Highway 22, that's how you get to Teton Village, which is after the town of Jackson, the major destination in the valley. And we need to be able to deal with that situation. So it's not just traffic going over the pass, it's traffic going back and forth to Teton Village. It used just to be a winter thing. Now it's a year-round thing. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but this option is critical for the county to start resolving our traffic issues, not just on 22, but throughout the county. Thank you. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions for Mr. Schwartz? Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must admit, I had a lot of skepticism toward this proposal. But as I begin to learn more, I'm seeing the value of it. I just want to make sure that I'm seeing it accurately. So what's being described here on this Route 22 is 3 lanes currently. Is the center then, is that a left turn from both sides? And am I correct in understanding that if you were to have this tool in your toolbox, as we're fond of saying, that you could, in your opinion, move traffic more freely without having to expend great amounts of money to widen the road?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft. So currently it's a 2-lane road. There's no turning lanes even. So motion on that lane, I mean, there's a couple spots with turning lanes, but it's just 2 lanes currently. It's on the STIP with YDOT. They are in conversations, and it will be a 4-lane road. So the real issue here is once that 4-lane road is constructed, can the left-hand lane be used as an HOV lane? The sentiment in the county and the town is that by using it as an HOV lane, probably just limited times of day, during the morning and afternoon or early evening, it will have a huge impact on how we move people around. So, but it is currently only 2 lanes.
Any further questions for Mr. Schwartz? I did have one, but it escapes me. So Mr. Schwartz, you're off lucky.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
I will add, I believe Melissa Turley is on the Zoom, and she is essentially the mayor of Teton Village, so she can speak to their perspective.
You just reminded me. So I know you're speaking on behalf of the city of Jackson
Correct.
right now. And we've heard from the county commissioners, but my question is mainly the enforcement mechanism. And we know that we would have the opportunity, but we know how sparsely employed right now our state troopers are. And having a state trooper sit on 22 to enforce this is just not the right force. Is Teton County planning on having an enforcement mechanism to help enforce this as they go forward?
Mr. Chairman, that is my understanding, and I know our sheriff is strongly in support of this bill.
Okay.
And they have, and actually part of what will make enforcement a little easier is a number of our deputy sheriffs live in Idaho. So I mean, this has been going on for a long time, and it actually is a benefit because it enables us to have increased patrol force, not only on 22, but more critically, which isn't related to this bill, on Teton Pass, where we get a lot of problems.
So are we going to have a whole bunch of officers coming over the pass that are responding to an emergency call with their, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just kidding.
Because Mr. Chairman, you know me, I would go there.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and open up any further public comment. Good. Excellent. If you can go ahead and please let in Ms. Turley to begin with, and then I believe we have Charlotte Fry on there as well, but we'll go ahead and hear from Ms. Turley first. Looks like we're seeing you there, Ms. Turley. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself if you would.
Good afternoon, Chairman Brown and members of the committee. I'm Melissa Turley, the Executive Director of the Teton Village Association. And the Teton Village Association has worked for over 2 decades to mitigate traffic impacts associated with activities in Teton Village. Of course, our primary season out here is winter, and we've enjoyed great success with those efforts. But as has been discussed here, I really appreciate the explanation of the bill from Director Reiner and all of the work that his staff has done. We feel that having this option on the table as YDOT proceeds with planning for Highway 22 would be really important for safety as well as for our workforce. Again, this bill is putting that tool in the toolbox. It's enabling a decision to be made in the future if the analysis determines that an HOV lane is appropriate in this corridor or others. I appreciate the chairman's question regarding assistance with enforcement, and there was a letter of support from our Teton County Sheriff Matt Carr to this committee over the summer, and he does in his letter commit that his staff would offer time and resources for enforcement of these lane restrictions set locally. We do have really critical issues when traffic is at a standstill on Highway 22 right now, and local emergency response is not able to get through that corridor to respond if there is an accident along the way. So this would provide a way that lane would be available for emergency response in those instances. And it also would, we hope, and again, there would be future analysis before it's implemented, but the intent would be to reduce congestion, to offer a way to move more people in fewer vehicles. I'm happy to stand for any questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Ms. Turley. Any questions? Representative Berger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Turley, what's up in Teton County? Were they looking at a road or maybe adding another community road like through Skyline in that area? Was that, or where was that?
Ms. Turley, if you know the answer to that question, you're more than welcome to.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, there has been discussion of, it's called the Tribal Trails Connection, that would go, I suppose, help me out, a little southeast of Skyline in the area that you're discussing. That's under review by Teton County. I think there's some partnership with YDOT. I'm not sure if Director Reiner is able to speak to that.
He's nodding very, very agreeably. So follow up.
But that one has not been approved, and this could possibly help as maybe a better option than that. Commuter, I guess, to anyone.
Representative Berger, the Tribal Trails Connector has not been approved yet. And again, as Director Reiner has stated, for the conversations that are occurring here locally among our community and our elected officials, the interest is really to have the opportunity to explore this as an option for the Highway 22 corridor. If it is determined to build 4 lanes on that corridor, then we'd like to have the opportunity to analyze whether it makes sense to build one of them as an HOV lane. As I understand it, the discussions surrounding the Tribal Trails Connector would be a 2-lane road. So I don't believe that this HOV lane would be appropriate for that.
Thank you, Ms. Turley. Any further questions for Ms. Turley? Thank you, and hopefully you can go enjoy some skiing today. All right, and then it looks like we have Ms. Fry, Charlotte. Is she still in the room? Go ahead. If you would start your video and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello, Chairman Brown, committee members. My name is Ty Hoth. I am Chief Admin Officer at Jackson Hole Mountain Resorts. And as Melissa alluded to, you know, we are in the middle of winter, and I think at the moment we're probably the state's largest employer, and I speak to the HOV lanes in that regard. I am here today to support high occupancy vehicles. I wish to reference previously submitted documents from Bob Jensen at Holland and Hart, and you'll actually see it's one of those addendums is from Sheriff Carr supporting this on behalf of an enforcement capacity, but also just on behalf of a search and rescue and emergency vehicle capacity we have as well. That's probably something that was also a little bit unique to our area. I also want to stress that specifically SF21 will not create a state with HOV lanes everywhere. I think this is just an option, and you know, to quote Director Reiner, this is a tool in our toolkit to solve some of the traffic solutions that we actually have and see. One of the things I've heard in this discussion is conversation specifically about usage and efficiency. And funny, the timing on that was very, very good, because Nelson Nygaard, who are traffic engineers, released a study last week specifically talking to the development of 4 lanes across that Y22 corridor that Melissa and Director Reiner were talking about. And if they look at auto volumes compared to where we are currently to the year 2035, using them as using it as vehicle occupancy only increases auto volumes 41.2%. Whereas if we use some of those lanes for HOV lanes, it increases auto volumes 6%. So specific to answer those questions on a usage and efficiency, it does occur with HOV lanes compared to other options. And the other options were, what do we do if we don't build out anything? What do we do if we have shoulder running transit, HOV lanes, and then 4 lanes? So the efficiency that we would see in moving people around occurs significantly with HOV lanes. That was all my statement. So I am able to answer any questions, and thank you very much for the time in supporting this bill.
Any questions? And I believe it's Hoth, is that right?
Hoth, yes. I'm the only one here that talks normally, but I appreciate everyone's accents.
Mr. Hoth, thank you. And I just figured Hoth, you know, from Star Wars and being up in the snow area might go better, but I appreciate the correction. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Hoth, for helping us out and indulging us today. Much appreciated. And let's go ahead and see if Charlotte is available.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I won't talk too long because I think a lot of our my colleagues have spoken to many of the benefits of this. As Chair Brown noted, $1 million a mile just to construct, but the benefit of limiting that pavement footprint could also mean limiting the maintenance liability. And of course, as anywhere in Wyoming, the number of plow trucks you would need to deploy to keep that roadway clear. So that's another consideration. And as Ms. Turley mentioned, there's a lot of safety benefits as well. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I have a lot of memories of a fire truck or an ambulance trying to come through the road and everyone on either lane having to get to either side. That really slows those EMTs down, whether there's someone in the back or not. You know, if they're trying to respond to an incident or they're trying to get that victim to treatment, those minutes matter. And it could be the difference between, you know, someone who's involved in an accident potentially being able to walk again, and it could certainly be the difference between life and death. So I think just being able to keep traffic moving in this corridor is really important, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony. And I stand for questions. Thank you.
Ms. Fry, just for your, just for the record, can I have you introduce yourself and your title? I know we received some information with your title, but we just need it for the record, if you could, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm Charlotte Fry, the Regional Transportation Planning Administrator for Teton County.
All right. Any questions for Ms. Fry? Thank you, Ms. Fry. And I know you've got a lot of work up there, so thank you for all you're doing up there. I know this is not an easy task for you guys, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any further public comment? Seeing none, we will move the bill back to the dais. Committee, what is your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Moved by Berger,
Second.
Seconded by O'Hearn. He beat you. Beat you, Tony. All right, committee. With this bill, again, we're not going to be going through line by line. It was worked fairly well, but I'll tell you, one of the things we don't do is let a Senate file out of our grasp without getting our sticky fingers all over it. So any amendments? Vice Chair O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I mentioned with the director and adjoining states, I'd like to double the fees on line 8, 12, and 17. From 25 to 50, 50 to 100, and 75 to 150.
Motion is to double the fees for violation of the HOV lanes. It has been moved. Seconded by Wiley. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of proposed amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
That passes. All right, any further discussions? Waiting. All right. Representative Nemeth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 2, line 12, strike the comma and the word bicycles.
Second.
It has been moved by Representative Nemeth and seconded by Stivar to strike the comma and bicycles. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, enthusiastic group today.
No.
All right, that amendment has been adopted as well. Diana, did you get that one? Yep. All right, committee, anything further?
Question.
Question being called. Diana, would you please call roll on Senate File 21 as amended?
Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemeth,
Aye.
Representative Overmuller,
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
No.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
That's 8 ayes, 1 no, do pass with amendment.
Representative Stivar, it sounds like that one hurt. All right, I will, I think myself and probably Vice Chair O'Hearn will probably take this one up, so nobody has to deal with the extra heavy lifting on this particular bill. And committee, the other thing I would say is there was some information brought forward by Mr. Jensen. I hope you get a chance to take a look at it. There is some really good information in the information that he sent to you. Specifically in the handout on this particular bill, and it really help you if we're going to the committee with this particular, or going to the floor with this bill. The average daily count for traffic and everything along those lines is a significant number, and this is just another arrow in the quiver for YDOT and the local communities to try to fix what they can. So with that, we are right on time, and we have one last bill to discuss, and that is Senate File, I believe 38. Is that right? Senate File 38. Senator Schuler is here waiting for us. Welcome to the House. You got it. Senator, the floor is yours when you are ready.
Thank you, Chairman Brown and Transportation Committee from the House. Recognize a few faces up here, and happy Valentine's Day to those of you. I hope you all remember to get your favorite Valentine something, just a little aside there. Anyway, I bring you Senate File 38, specially license plates, organ donation. This bill comes as a constituent bill. One of my constituent sons was a recent heart transplant organ recipient. He was born with half a heart, and he and his father started pushing this bill last year, and we actually got it out of the Senate, but we ran out of time. Of course, it was a budget session, so we definitely wanted to bring it back. What this bill does really is just to raise awareness with our Wyoming residents of the importance of organ donation. Just to give you a little bit of history about some organ donation that might help a little bit with this bill. There's about 150,000 people on the waiting list to receive organs, and we have about 150 in Wyoming that are waiting for life-saving organ donation. Wyoming as a whole is pretty good. We're about 63% of our folks that have signed up to be organ donors, which is pretty good. I think we're in the top 5. We want to be even be a little bit better. And so anyway, when I talked with this gentleman and his son, I found out a lot more than I thought I knew about organ donation. I thought there was a cutoff age. I thought if you had various illnesses or diseases, you couldn't be a donor. And we actually have had a person that was up to 100 years of age was able to donate. So even I could donate still. One donor can save more than 75 people through tissue donation. One donor can save the sight of 2 individuals through eye donation. But there's about 17 people every day in our country that wait for life-saving organs. So anyway, that's the kind of the background. And this young man, while he was waiting in this hospital in a state to the west of us, where this transplant took place, he made friends with a young lady who was also waiting for a heart. And where this came from his perspective, was he got a heart and she didn't, and she passed away. And he just felt like, there's more I got to do. And so, he's a healthy teenager now. He actually testified on the Senate side and last year as well. He's playing football, he's playing soccer, he's playing a variety of different sports. I'm surprised they're letting him play football, but that's how healthy he's become as a result of this donation. So he just wants to be able to raise, the idea that more people need to think about donation. Now, I know a lot of us, when we go in and, I remember when I took my kids in to get their licenses, you talk about it then sometimes, and I say, do you want to be a donor? And, a lot of times when they're, young, they don't really think about, is that something that I want to do? And some parents just, blow it off. But what this does, this bill, basically, if you want to take a look at, I can't remember which page it's on, there'll be an application, I guess it's on page 2. Application forms will be at each county treasurer's office, and it's just going to include space in there, and it's going to offer an option for you to donate $1 or more to promote wellness, awareness, and education. It'll go to a separate account in the Department of Health. And I want to just make it really perfectly clear, it's an option. It's not something you have to do. It's if you want to pay $1, great. If you want to pay more, that's fine too. And where that money will go, it'll go to a separate account in the Department of Health. They will actually have an advisory council. They already have an advisory council, but that council will decide how to promote public awareness for organ donation. So really, it's that more than anything else. If you want to take a look at the picture, that's the young man showing a picture of what a license plate might look like. On the back, he collects license plates from all around the country. And so there will probably be a distinctive symbol on the license plate, and it just indicates the vehicle owner support for organ donation. We have to have 1,000 sets issued by 2031, or it would be eliminated. It's only going to cost about $6,000 to set it up. It's pretty cheap. The bottom line is, I did have one question on the Senate side. They go, well, so what if an EMT comes upon an accident and you've got one of those, do they know who's the donor in the car? Really, it doesn't say that you have to be a donor. If you just want to, sign up, I mean, you yourself might not be the driver. Maybe your husband is driving, you're not. So that designation on that license plate, it just says you've donated, that somebody has signed up, or maybe nobody, but at least you have the donor plate, you bought the plate. And also there were a few other questions about, why would this plate be any more important than a veteran's or some of the other plates that we have out there? And it isn't, except unless you're one of those parents or family members that might be waiting for a life-saving donation. I'll probably, if it passes, I'll probably buy one. Who knows? There might be somebody in my family that might need one of those one of these days. And I don't think it's not any important than a veteran or we've got the Purple Heart folks that have their own license plate. We have the wildlife folks that have theirs. There's a few plates out there. And what I think it does, because I had another question, do we have, too many license plates? I don't know. I don't think so, really, because I know if I see a veteran's plate, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago when I was driving back to Cheyenne, there was a veteran in front of me, the veteran plate, and I saw it, and I felt like going over and paying for his gas and thanking him for his service. That's what I think these specialty license plates do. They kind of give us a little something to say, oh, wow, that's a Purple Heart person there that received a Purple Heart, or that's a Gold Star mother there, or that's a veteran, or that's somebody that donates to our wildlife fund. So again, those are just some of the things that came up on the Senate side. And like I said, I'm just tickled pink that we have a constituent that really wants to do more than just have his heart and go on about his life. So with that, I would be more than happy to try and answer any questions.
You're literally tickled pink. You're wearing a pink shirt today.
I
So
am,
it's
yeah.
perfect. Committee, Representative Stiver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Schuler, did you ever think about doing a sticker first and see how many stickers you could get? Sort of like the women veterans, the breast cancer awareness bill that's out there. As the department already spends a lot of money on special license plates that get destroyed. Was that ever a consideration in this?
Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Chairman, Senator, excuse me, sorry, Senator Representative.
Don't
It's
insult
gonna
us.
take me a minute.
Don't go there.
Thank you.
Representative Stiver, I actually thought about it. And I think the thing I think about really more than anything else is just our real, typically bad winters. And I know how beat up my license plates and my cars get. And I felt like having the embedded logo was much better than having the sticker. I actually did think about it though. Thank you for the question.
Any further questions? So I have one, and it's just, I've been here long enough that I've watched enough license plate bills die, but usually what it's associated with, we usually see some sort of a fee associated with this. And I noticed that there's no fee associated with this. This is just a standard. We just want you to be able to replace this license plate with your standard issue license plate. Is there a reason for that? And maybe you can expound on that for me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I looked at some of the, like the Wildlife Trust Fund, for instance, or UW. No, I talked to the constituent and his son, and that was never the thought. It was strictly just an awareness campaign. Let's see if we can get more folks. 63% is pretty good, but let's see, we want to be number one in the nation besides some of the bad things that we're number one about. So that was their thought, is they didn't, I know the state west of us has a regular fee for their organ donations. I think the other states do, but we didn't really want that, and neither did the constituents. So that was the reason for that.
Any further questions for Senator? Yes, Vice Chair O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're looking at the engrossed copy. What did you guys change on the Senate side from the original bill?
Senator?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman and Representative O'Hearn. The only thing we changed was the date. The folks at YDOT felt like the date that we had was going to be a little tough by the time they had a chance to get their computers up and get this license plate made. So that's really all we changed was that.
Thank you. Any further questions? Senator, thank you so much.
You betcha.
Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks.
Director or Mr. Rossetti or anybody, I guess, from YDOT. We kind of got the whole contingent here today, so. Good afternoon. Please just introduce yourself for the record.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. Debbie Lopez with the YDOT Motor Vehicle Services Division. All the concerns that we had were addressed with the amendments on the Senate side, and we can administer that this as written. I would like to add that there is a $30 specialty plate fee for this plate.
Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said a $30 fee for this specialty plate.
Mr.
What
Chair,
is it for a veterans plate, Purple Heart plate?
Ms. Lopez.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiver, there is a $30 fee for like our prestige plates, firefighter, EMT, the veteran plates is a little bit different fee. It's a $50 fee.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Ms. Lopez? Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Appreciate the clarification on the fee.
Sure.
Any further public testimony? Mr. Winnie? Come on up, Bob, and just fill the chairs, please. It saves us a little bit of time as we're going through this. Mr. Winnie, please, floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. I'd like to offer the committee a slightly different perspective. You've always talked here of special plates and things like that. Across my Navy career, I handled one major casualty and one not so major casualty. With organ donation, time is of the essence. And so for law enforcement or EMS arriving on the scene of an accident to quickly identify that there may be an organ donor involved in one of the cars or both of them could be important in being able to recover organs if need be. And so in my view, their recognition and being able to get on with it and get the system rolling is of vast importance. So to me, this carries a little bit different than a veteran's license plate or those kind of things. So subject to your questions, thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Whitty? Thank you, Mr. Whitty. Mr. Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bob Jensen. I'm with the law firm of Holland and Hart here today representing Donor Alliance. Donor Alliance is one of 57 organ procurement organizations or OPOs in the country, serving nearly all of Wyoming, except for the southwestern counties of Wyoming. Those counties are served by the Utah OPO, which is called Donor Connect. Donor Alliance and Donor Connect fully support SF38 and applaud the efforts of the senators and representatives in the Quinney family to create the opportunity for those generous Wyomingites who support organ, eye, and tissue donation and proudly display their support through a Wyoming Donate Life license plate. Today there are over 100 Wyoming residents waiting for an organ transplant. In 2022, over 61% of Wyoming residents who went to obtain a state ID or a driver's license expressed their support for organ, eye, and tissue donation by saying yes and signing up on the state donor registry. I'm one of those. Currently, Wyoming ranks in the top 5 U.S. states with a 61% donor designation rate. We can be proud of that. So on behalf of the Wyoming residents who lead the country in organ donation designation rates and those over 100 residents who are still waiting for a life-saving transplant, the Donor Alliance hopes that you will support this bill and improve the awareness of organ donation in the state. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. Any questions for Mr. Jensen? Seeing none, thank you so much. Mr. Rossetti, I actually have a question that you might be able to, and or Ms. Lopez. We usually set the record at 1,000 license plates, and that's kind of the break-even point to find out whether or not we want to do this. I'm just curious, setting something up like this is about a $6,000 fee. I'm thinking that I kind of like these plates and I'd like them to be out there. And I'm thinking that if we don't get 1,000, I don't want them to disappear. Is that number something, I know that we've done that in the past, but is that the number that it would need to be to YDOT in order to break even for the setup and getting everything rolling on this particular license plate?
Mr. Chairman, again, Taylor Rossetti, Support Services at YDOT. You know, there have been examples in the past where this body has actually gone to 500. Obviously, the more we sell, the better and closer to neutral we get. I do believe the cause is pretty important. As a couple people have said, the primary registration point is also at YDOT at Driver Services. So again, we're actively involved in this group. I think that's a policy decision for you guys. We're comfortable whichever direction you guys go. We just try to be very transparent when you ask us to do something. That's the only reason you see that $6,000 cost. We'll be happy to do what the body directs us to do.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I opened up a can of worms. Representative Berger.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Rossetti. If I don't get the specialty plate, I can still donate during my license. Is that correct?
Mr. Rossetti?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Berger, yes, you currently can donate Driver Services, and there is a provision in the registration statute that already allows you to donate to organ donation.
Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to begin by saying that I am a victim of birth defects. I'm a donor myself. I believe everybody in my family is a donor, so I'm certainly empathetic to what's being done here. That said, Have you considered other approaches? And this would be kind of across a number of agencies petitioning the state to get involved and make different license plates. Have you considered perhaps an approach? You sell a license plate frame, the extra money then goes into support the business there and leave the state out of it with their minimal purchases and those other things. Have we looked at other ways of raising awareness?
Mr. Rossetti, so Representative Pendergraft, since this is not his bill, I won't ask him to answer that because they're neutral on the bill as every state agency should be. So, but that being said, if Senator Schuler would like to answer that, she's more than welcome to come back up about other opportunities of awareness and what we've done here as opposed to bringing the state into it. Senator?
Thank you, Chairman Brown and Representative Pendergraft. I think there's probably other options out there too. Maybe not as cheap actually as this. I think there's probably more we can do at our state level with our Department of Health than what we're doing. That's kind of the whole idea of having the option to donate money to them so that they can use a special fund to, I think they could go to health fairs. There's a lot of things we could do, I think, within hospitals to just get people thinking a little bit about it. So yeah, you're right. There's probably other options and we're probably not taking advantage of some of the things that we should do to try to get more people to sign up as organ donors. Good question. Thank you.
Any further questions at all? All right, thank you, Senator. Any further public testimony? I don't think there was. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public testimony, bring the bill back to the dais. I'm going to give it to, oh, we do have somebody online? Excellent, please. I wasn't sure if they were going to make it or not, so.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear us okay?
We can hear you. Please introduce yourself and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Eric Quinney and this is my son, Bryson. Bryson is now 16 years old and was a recipient of a heart transplant. And I find it very ironic that we're able to talk about this on Valentine's Day and also appreciate the tie that you're wearing, Mr. Chairman, as obviously the heart means a lot to us. Before I have Bryson talk a little bit about what is driving this, I just wanted to talk about how important it is and kind of what sets this, I think, specialty license plate apart from the others is there's currently 39 other states that are utilizing the license plate to promote organ donation awareness. And we're seeing a direct impact on that in increasing people's electing to be organ donors when they go to driver's license services. And so I think, as there's other opportunities, and we're certainly engaged with the Donor Alliance and Donor Connect to help spread awareness beyond the license plate for sure. And we're committed to, if we can get this bill passed and we ask for your support to do that in making sure that we can get the required number of plates on vehicles so that we can see this exist beyond 2031. But the key is starting conversations as people see these plates on vehicles driving down the road, start having conversations with their families and before there's a tragedy that occurs. And organ donation unfortunately requires usually a tragedy or a sad time. And so if those conversations can happen while just driving down the road on a normal trip and getting some of those conversations out there before these type of events happen, that they're made easier when those do come. And so we just are super excited and our work's not going to stop here. This is the start of what we're trying to do. And I'm going to let Bryson, my son, talk a little bit about what is driving his motivation to make sure that more people become organ donors. Bryson?
Like Senator Schuler said when she was talking, I had a friend, Mackenzie, when I was in the hospital, one of my bestest friends. She was waiting for a heart and kidney. And before that, before she was inpatient, she was very, very big on organ donation and spreading awareness. She loved doing that. And so when she passed, it kind of made me realize, like, more people need to become organ donors. So people like Mackenzie can, have lives like mine and be able to expand their lives upon what it was. So to be able to have this small opportunity to let people notice your license plate on the road, to have that small talk with their families to go sign up to be organ donor, can be a absolutely huge game changer in lives like mine and Mackenzie's and kids and adults like me to be able to live life to the fullest, even though we've had defects in the past.
Bryson, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Mr. Quinney, thank you guys both so much for testifying, and be honest with you, you sit there and you start talking about Mackenzie, it starts choking me up. Something that no kid should have to deal with, certainly, and a family for that matter as well. So thank you both for testifying today. Any questions for Mr. Quinney? Representative Berger?
Mr. Chairman, can I just say hi to my constituents?
Certainly.
Mr. Quinney, it's good to see you. Bryson, I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for what you're doing, and thank you for leading the way there in Uintah County, buddy. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Anything
Thank
further? Mr. Quinney, Bryson, thank you guys so much. Stay safe out there, and we'll hope to get this through the finish line for you guys.
Thank you
so much.
Committee will go ahead and move it back.
Bryson, let's move this bill.
Okay. Bill is moved by Representative Wiley,
Second.
seconded by, I'm going to give it to Nemec. I'm going to give it to him. I got a hand gesture, so. All right. Committee, any amendments that you guys have seen? Not going to run through the bill line by line or page by page. Nobody has anything. I will bring one. I'm going to go to line 15 on page 3. And strike 1,000 and insert 500. Seconded by Nemec. And committee, I don't have to spend a whole bunch of time on this. I like the plates. I think they're great. And I think that if we can have 500 of them out there, I want to keep them out there and available to people. So I think 1,000 is kind of a tall order, but I think we're going to hit 500 with no problem. And I'd like to keep them out there. So any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no?
No.
Okay, that amendment has been adopted. We like to get our fingers on these Senate files, Senator. All right, anything further, committee? Question being called. Anna, would you please call roll on Senate File 38 as amended?
Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative Overmuller,
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraph,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
No.
Representative Stivar,
No.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 2 noes, do pass with amendment.
All right, Senator, I noticed there's 2 co-sponsors here. We've got Representative Berger on this as well as Representative Conrad. Tag team it out.
Conrad can do it.
All right, we'll let them fight this one out. So thank you, Senator. All right, committee, we are getting down to the last couple of committee meetings. Again, we only meet twice a week, so it's kind of tough to get a whole bunch of extra bills through here. We're going to keep burning through these as quick as possible, minimum of 3 per meeting. That being said, Thursday, we will be here with the military department, and we'll have a couple of bills on the military side of things instead of YDOT. Director, thank you so much. And I believe you guys have a commission meeting on Thursday, so I'm sure you'll keep us abreast of anything that comes up out of that. But committee, the last thing that I have for you is we have talked a lot about interim topics, even at the very beginning. You guys have until the 24th to submit your interim topics to Kelly Lower right here, and or submit them online. Either way, that still goes through. So please make sure that you guys, if you have something that you wish to be considered by the committee, you get that in. If it is not in by the 24th, it will not be considered. Okay. All right, committee, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.